On today's show, we're going to take a deeper dive into level 1 of our strategic advantage baseball process, competitive advantage. Hey guys, welcome back to Strategic Baseball Podcast. Last episode, we gave you an overview of our strategic advantage baseball process that we're using here at Athletic Mission Baseball Academy in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And as we mentioned on that show, this next couple episodes we're going to do is going to be a deeper dive into the 4 levels: the competitive advantage, unique hitting and pitching skills, strategic advantage mindset, and game day execution, all of which makes up the strategic advantage baseball process. And today we're going to focus on competitive advantage. Geoff and Darrell here, and we help baseball players get to the next level with a strategic advantage so that they can play with supreme confidence against the best players at any level. In every episode, we promise to deliver value on the strategic side of player development to help your players compete with players just as good, if not better than them. Today, we are going to go a little bit deeper into the competitive advantage. And if you caught our last episode, you got the overview of the strategic advantage baseball process, with the first level being this competitive advantage. We explained how this is where a majority of baseball player development model is currently at, and how we want to push this conversation forward. So Darrell is a pitching strategist. I am a hitting strategist, and this is Strategic Baseball Podcast. If you are interested in joining our circle, head over to strategic-baseball.com. You can find this in our show notes and submit your email. And that way you can get a reminder each time we release a new episode, weekly tip from us, and a PDF transcription and visual of the previous episode. If you are a player, parent, or coach who is interested in learning more about the strategic advantage baseball process for your unique situation, go ahead and email me at Geoff with a Geoff at athletic-mission.com or Darrell at dc@startpitching.com. There are 2 T's in start. You'll be able to find that in the show notes, and then we'd love to arrange a time to speak with you and see how we can help you. So Darrell, you're here, man. How are you doing?
Doing great, Geoff. Excited to dig into this competitive advantage and take a little deeper dive into what guys are actually doing out there to get ready to play at the next level, man.
Awesome. Well, let's get into this, man. As I mentioned earlier, today we have competitive advantage. This being the first level of the strategic advantage baseball process. So let's go ahead and dive in, and I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of where as you stated earlier, where the majority of the baseball focus is on. And I get it. As you're a young player and you're really learning the game, or you're really trying to decide whether baseball is even a sport that you want to dig deeper into, I think this is probably the initial focus. So if parents take kids to a tryout, this is kind of the measurables and the different aspects of baseball that's being judged, how hard they throw and how hard they hit a baseball, or can they fill their position, and are they athletic, and body type, and all these different things that you hear. And again, as you move up and you start growing up, and as we talk about around Athletic Mission, as you start developing into your man body, you can start really trying to project some of that out. But I think what happens, Geoff, way too early, that we get as parents and coaches and maybe even as instructors, we get so focused on the athleticism and trying to build strength and really focus on that piece of it, that we miss the baseball aspects of it, that we got to teach the game. And I think that's what you're seeing a lot. I mean, from the improvements over the last 30 years in strength conditioning programs and really individualized player-specific training, it's been amazing. I mean, players are bigger, faster, stronger, throw harder, and And again, I'm not jealous of that. I'm envious of it. I'm glad that these players today are doing the work and doing the things they need to do. And there's a lot of great trainers and coaches out there in this like mechanics development and strength and conditioning, and a lot of players and can get information almost anywhere now on the internet or in your local training facility about that. But I think what happens is when we start talking about what it takes to play at the next level, and how do we make that transition from, 50 foot or 54 feet to the 60-foot mound, and then from junior varsity to varsity, and then for the players that want to move on and play college or maybe even pro ball one day, that athleticism, when they're started to really be evaluated against kids that are just as good or better than them, is not the differentiator anymore. It becomes more baseball specific, skill specific, and what you and I call unique skill specific. What do they do in their advanced baseball skills? So basically, what are we doing to take our athleticism, take our good mechanics, take that high velocity fastball or our fastball, and really develop it into unique baseball skills? So that would be off-speed pitches and command, and then honestly understanding the situation and count, and how do we decide what is the absolute best pitch to throw. And I think that's kind of where we took the pitcher training and the pitcher development piece at Athletic Mission, and what you focus on here on the hitting side is really about now, okay, we've done a good job. The baseball world is doing a better job of getting these guys ready, and kids are bigger, faster, stronger now than they ever been. How do we help them then take that competitive advantage, take that physical skill set, take those measurables, and really turn it into becoming a complete baseball player based on whatever position they want to play, and then based on how do they take advantage of their physical skills. And I think that's kind of where we're seeing baseball and coaches overall start asking better questions about, yeah, man, we're getting really good at developing baseball athletes, but are we truly developing, game day execution type of athletes, and really helping them complete and become a true complete baseball player? And I think that's where this conversation's going, Geoff. And I think that's the cool thing about what we've done down here is we're starting to get some positive feedback by us trying to explain that there's more to baseball than your physical skill. And I think one other thing I want to point out real quick is that when we hear people talk all the time that now baseball is 90% mental, I think that's confusing to a lot of young players that are pretty good athletes. The truth is once we get the base skill set, the fundamentals down, and we're starting to grow and really develop out as a physically and mentally, that there's a strategic part of the game that makes baseball baseball. And it seems like we've just kind of glossed over that. We kind of went through like that. It's just like the natural evolution that if you are a really good baseball player, or you got the fundamentals down, that if you just keep working harder and harder on the fundamentals, that it's going to develop you out as a strategic player, which we define as somebody that knows how to study their opponent and create a game plan against their opponent. And I think that's kind of the missing piece. But what's also cool is I think that's where the game's going. And I think now coaches and parents and players are starting to ask better questions about, okay, this is great. We've developed out the skill set, and my son can throw 2 or 3 pitches pretty good. Now, how does that translate into having game day success?
Yeah, Darrell, you nailed it. This is a conversation that you and I have quite a bit. There are a ton of kids, coaches, and instructors that are doing great work. It's really kind of amazing when you look at it. The kids are faster, stronger, and bigger with access to a ton of information compared to when you and I played. But even with all of that, there are players that are struggling at all levels. The training and the information is not getting guys ready for a baseball game. And, at the end of the day, that's what matters.
Absolutely.
Game day. That is where it's at. And that's what parents are looking for their kids. So you and I have been trying to fill this gap with our strategic advantage baseball process. helping guys make this next jump so that they can perform in a real baseball game against an opponent who is good in a high pressure situation. And this is where, our guys tend to have the light bulb moment and realize, okay, maybe it's not really all about the measurables after all. Because when you show up on game day, what you have is what you have. And you got to go out there and you got to compete and you got to win with what you have. You got to execute.
Yeah. And I think it's something that as coaches, we've never really took that piece on. We've always kind of framed it like the mental side. And again, there is a mental side of it. There's a part that drives our thoughts and the way we think and the way we see things. But at the end of the day, it's how we combine our physical skills and the way we see things and turn that into a plan that is executable on game day. And it seems like that's where the conversation ends. So it's easier when somebody's struggling just to blame it on the mental side, or they're not focused, or they're not thinking right, or they need to be more self-confident. And the truth is, we see this all the time, man. We see the kids that in the bullpen, they're pretty good, man. And they can do what they want, with somewhat consistency. But as soon as we add that pressure, then that's where strategy is got to take over. And that way it becomes more about what I'm doing on game day instead of if I'm good enough to do it on game day. And I think that right there is the switch. I call it from practice to pressure, because a lot of the parents that call, a lot of my remote clients that we have conversations about, it's like, hey, they pitch really well in practice. They do well in bullpens. They command it in practice games, but in scrimmages. But as soon as we cross that white line in a real baseball game and the national anthem starts, then something happens. And so if we know they're healthy and we know they got the physical skill set, then the truth of it is it's not positive self-talk. It's not clearing your mind that's going to go out there and let these guys compete under extreme pressure in a real baseball game. It's got to be strategy. It's got to be what they're focused on and what they know about their opponent that gives them that confidence to go ahead and execute the game plan. And so when we start putting it in that perspective, and what we've been doing over the last few months with our college prep guys here, you're seeing them. It's a deeper conversation. Yes. Is it a tougher conversation? I don't think so. I think it's just a matter of how we continue to level these guys up through these 4 stages and these 4 levels of creating a strategic advantage mindset. And I think that's the cool thing about this conversation and starting to engage more coaches and players and parents about, hey, man, your son is really super talented, or you got players on your team that's underperforming. Then we can't just keep going back and changing their physical skill set. If their physical skill set's pretty good, every time we make a change to them, it starts screwing with their confidence. Right. So the reality of it is how do we sit here and honestly assess these guys and say, okay, because every year we're going to have to go through these 4 levels. We're going to go through an off-season training. We're going to do our preseason stuff to get ready for the season. And then we're going to start games. And so as we move through this competitive advantage and really what is my unique pitching or hitting skills, and then into the strategy piece, that is the preparation piece that all these coaches talk about. But a lot of times we don't really help these guys completely develop out what is a game day strategy, where within that strategy can they make confident adjustments. And that's the reality of what happens in a real baseball game. So now how do we take that out to the field? And I think that's the cool thing about strategic advantage baseball and kind of the conversation we're trying to have is, hey, man, there's a lot of good work being done at the strength and conditioning, the arm care, the velocity piece, the exit velocity, all the hitting side, the swing. But now how do we really, 1, focus on developing individual players, and 2, how do we help them really create a game plan based on their individual skill set and take it out there and execute it in a way that it not only helps them perform better, but it helps the team win and overall the way we play the game better.
Yeah, and when we look around, more want to have this conversation. And what's cool about our strategic advantage baseball process, that we developed is that it's a real process. Process is like a buzzword. And when you ask guys what their process is, they can't really tell you. So this is where our strategic advantage baseball process, which is a real step-by-step process, and really it's designed to stack on top of what guys are really doing.
Absolutely.
So it's not meant to replace what they're doing, but really meant to enhance what they're doing and what they're doing really well. And this is what you and I believe is really missing, a real process. And then, of course, we get into the how do you teach it, which is going to be the key. But another thing that you mentioned that I want to bring back up is that when we talk about the mental side, the mental side, this competitive advantage and even the unique hitting skill, which we're going to talk about in the next episode, this is the you part. This is the you personally. And, you shared with me the other day, there was a poll on Twitter and somebody asked what was missing, and the two choices was the mental or the strategy. And to my surprise, the majority of people said it was the mental side, which is interesting. And I think it's really just because of the lack of clarity and understanding of what strategy really is. And so when we talk about the mental, we're talking about you individually, which is important, and what you and I see. And this is okay because this is the competitive advantage. And this is good whenever you're facing guys that you're better than. But the moment you start facing guys that are just as good or better than you, then this is where strategy matters, because it's about them and their preparation against them. And that's based on what they know about themselves and what they know about that person, the pitcher or the hitter individually. Now, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I think it's important to understand that the competitive advantage goes to the unique or the advanced skills, and then eventually into the strategic advantage.
Yeah, and I think what we'll do, just to see what you're going to see, Geoff, is I think this is the piece that not only are people ready to have a conversation about, and we're not downplaying it here, that physical skills, athleticism, all of that stuff will open doors and give you opportunities. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
What we're talking about is now, how do we take those opportunities that those doors open? And then on the opposite end of that, with these younger players that are gonna be more late bloomers, then how do we keep them playing the game? Because I think we're over projecting or under projecting, or however you want to call it, and we're running some really good baseball players, young baseball players, out of the game because they don't feel like they're going to project out yet. And what we drive home to these guys at Lake Mission, you don't have to be really good until you're 20, 21. You just got to keep getting better, and there'll be a place for you to play in college. Now, it might not be D1 or it might not be at the biggest baseball school in the country, but if you keep working, that you don't have to be, judged and graded out by your measurables at 15 and 16 forever. And so it's just kind of keeping that mindset of how do we keep these players going, and not being so hyper-focused on measurables that we forget that baseball is played on a field, man, and that the true serum of really the reality of how good you are is determined on how well you play on game day. And the stuff that we do up to that point is important, but at the end of the day, man, a lot of the calls that I'm getting now from, guys from outside of Tulsa is really about, hey, now I throw 90, 91, 92, and I'm still not able to go ahead and command my pitches, or not having the success I have on game day. What is going on? What is wrong? And I think that's what we're hearing and getting feedback from coaches across this country too, is that there's a lot of guys that are really pounding the baseball but they're not getting that game day success, and kind of what is missing. They got the physical skill set, but now all of a sudden it ain't translating into unique skills, and it ain't translating into a strategy that is executable on game day.
Yeah, and this is what makes this is a very fun conversation with a kid, because it's not all about the measurable. And when they realize this, you can see them kind of just relax a little bit. And now they can like
Absolutely.
really focus on their game and where they're currently at, and not get so hung up with their name not being on that whiteboard for the highest exit velocity or that whiteboard for the throwing velocity. And it's cool because now you can see them really focus on them and not everybody else. So they've really gotten out of this comparing and convince mindset and made this switch to what you call the compete and contribute mindset and make it all about them, where they're at, and
Absolutely,
where they want to
man.
go.
And I think that really ties up the competitive advantage piece of it. We see now, man, that you got to get out of that compare and convince mindset and really move into that compete and contribute mindset. And that kind of sets you free to go out. And again, the paradox of baseball is that it really is an individual team sport. You know, so you got to understand that concept that a lot of the stuff you have to do individually is going to impact the team as a whole. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the reality of the game that we play. And so do your work. You know, your individual skill set matters, and your athleticism and your physical capability is important to being able to perform and stay healthy. But at the same time, it's the first step of being a really good baseball player. And hopefully over these next few shows, we'll start breaking down the other 3 steps and taking a deeper dive into that.
Yeah, so that breaks down the level 1 of our strategic advantage baseball process, competitive advantage. Again, there's a lot of people doing really good work. Sir. We just want to push the conversation forward. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. So anyways, if you guys like this podcast, this conversation, please leave us a review. And again, visit our strategic-baseball.com and join our list. In the next episode, we're going to talk about the second level of our strategic advantage baseball process, which is the unique hitting and pitching skills. So take that a little bit further, and we will catch you all then.